We're starting with the fresh set today. She has boy hands at the moment.
Ugh.
But this is the set that we're doing. Super cutesy, super spring vibes. Is there anything you want to change or we love it all?
The thumb, I think is that purple?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the thumb we're gonna add hopefully some kind of pink.
Like a light pink.
Yeah, like light
pastel.
baby, yeah.
Okay, perfect. And you want the medium?
Yes.
Beautiful. So this is Elisa. This is my homegirl. She actually started as my client.
And we just hit 1 year since you've been doing my nails.
When?
Last week I think, March.
Really?
End of March it was. 1 year since you've been doing my nails.
You're like one of the only like regulars I have because I feel like I closed down my books right after.
Yes.
But that came from TikTok. What do you feel like you saw that made you like want to come?
I was scrolling and you were on live.
Okay.
And God, I wish I remember what
it was.
Yeah, like what? Because I don't click lives on TikTok.
Right.
I just like, you know how you can preview it before you click it, and I like actually clicked it. I wish I remember. It must have been some fire nails.
Right, that I was doing.
Mm-hmm. And then finally somebody asked you where you were based, and you said Stewart. And I was like, shut the fuck up right now.
Oh my gosh.
And so I immediately went to go to your books, and it was all like blocked off, I guess And I was like, oh, she's booked out, of course. Look at her at TikTok.
Right. You had like your own tech before that, right?
Yeah, for, oh gosh, 19, what year was that, 25 years?
What do you feel like you liked about your old nail tech and then what you didn't like?
She took what I liked is that she spent so much time on like my shape and like, I didn't get designs like crazy, anything back then. I was super plain Jane. And
but you guys, she usually gets her nails super long. Today we're doing medium, but she's like a double XL nail girly.
Yeah.
Always has been.
Yeah, they were so long.
Crazy.
It was more of like, it kind of became like a friendship, and so it was like my once a month, like going to therapy. And we would yap, whatever. And she spent so much time on my shape, and it was like, perfect from what I came from before that, and so I was like, oh, I just love my shape, really, because I didn't get designs. Like she'd do some crazy designs, and so it wasn't even like that for me. But what ended up happening is that we would be there for 8 hours plus. We were both,
and that's just inconvenient,
right? And
like
then
I know other techs that take so long, but it's like that's a whole day affair, and people can't afford to spend that much time.
So it used to be like, ooh, I'm looking forward to this like one Friday night, and we like order food and drink wine and watch YouTube or a movie. And then life got too busy, and it was like holidays, and I have a trip, and like I can't get in. And towards the end, my nails started breaking like pretty hardcore.
Why do you think like they just started breaking out of nowhere?
They
like
were
you
really
didn't have
long.
that problem before?
Right. They were longer than normal, but yeah, as far as maybe like product or like quality, they were breaking like so often, and then to get in just to fix a nail was like insane.
When she first came to me, her pinky nail was like hanging on by a thread.
Like lockdown March, and then they reopened in like July. August.
Okay, that's literally how I like started and got so many clients off rip. It's because all the salons were shut down, and like you really weren't supposed to be doing nails at that time for sanitary reasons, and like just not like, I don't know, seeing people face to face, I guess. But because of that, nobody could get their nails done at the salon, and they were all coming to me, and that was like my practice. And granted, they were like popping off, falling off, like so ugly, breaking. Perfect. There was one time, this girl and her friend came, and I used to take forever, of course, because I was a beginner. And we were there for literally like 10 hours. Like I was doing her friend's nails and her nails, and she literally walked out to the car to leave, and opening her car door, she broke a nail. So we actually, our first appointment, it was our first appointment, right?
It was, literally.
Yeah. And it's so funny because whenever, like, when you're a nail tech or, like, I feel like any beauty service provider, because you're together for so long, off your first appointment, you just, like, talk about your whole life. Like, every time I get a new client, like, I literally learn their whole life story in the first session.
That's so true.
Because I feel like, too, when you're new, like when you're like we're new to each other, you want to keep talking because you want it to be comfortable, like you don't want to be
and not want to
awkward.
be awkward silent. Yeah.
Right. So like conversations just lead into each other, and then I just get your whole life story. It was funny because I just met a new client a couple weeks ago, and like within the first 20 minutes we were talking about how like her brother died and her dad died and like all this like deep ass shit. And you know, I feel like normally when you meet people, you don't get into like your traumas or like, but it's just different. Like, and two, I feel like especially with nail techs, because with the lash tech, you're not looking face to face. Your eyes are closed, so it's a little bit different. But the nail tech, we're like staring at each other for like hours. So, but our first bonding thing, because at this time I really wanted to start going to therapy, and she was like telling me about her therapy experience and whatever, and I was like, oh my god, I want to go. And I started going to her, and I went
like, right away.
Yeah, literally like within a couple months, or not even a couple weeks.
Not even. Yeah, I feel like you called her. Yeah, mine did too.
Yeah, I think I texted you and was like, what's her information?
And what's funny is that so many people would ask me like, oh my god, what's your therapist? Or like they
would never go.
Right, and then you did, and that's why I was like, oh.
I was dead serious about it. What was I going through at that time? When was this? A year ago?
March of last year.
Oh, that was rough. It was a rough time.
Yeah. Now that I know. Yeah.
Yeah. And two, like, I don't know, I feel like I haven't been through anything like super crazy, like no childhood trauma or stuff like that, but I feel like at that time I thought therapy was like important for everybody, and then we had a bad experience.
We did,
but you had been going to her for a long time.
I still believe, like, you know, that it could be good just for anybody, regardless of what, because I remember you telling me that, you're like, when you went to her for the first time and she was like, oh, no this, no that, no child, like, and what I like is that she would bring up stuff, or I guess maybe therapy in general, I don't want to just say her, but...
Is that the only therapist you've been to?
It was, yeah, actually, I guess. That would bring up stuff that like you don't even realize that stems from. Right. So while you could say like, oh, I've never had childhood, like, and that be completely 100%.
Right, because she said stuff that I was like, oh shit, maybe there is some childhood. You know?
And it's like legit, like I'll think about it now and I'm like, oh, you know, I know where that stems from, and you know, whatever. So you'll think that things aren't what, you know, I guess, how it affects you.
But I feel like that's why you go to therapy, is because they pick out those things that you normally wouldn't think about.
But she wanted me to do a trauma timeline towards the beginning, like when I first started going, and I was like, I can't remember.
So do you feel like, because I guess it is supposed to be hard, I feel like people go to therapy thinking that like it's gonna make them better, but I feel like too, you unlock so much trauma that you don't really feel better initially. Right. Because then you're like thinking about it and like, I don't know. Sometimes
some
I feel
stuff
like
that gets brought up that it's like, why was that necessary to bring that up? Like, yeah, I can see that. Like, it's just, for me, I was going weekly, once a week. Some people go once a month, you know.
And we've talked about that too, like, both of us like stopped going to the same girl at the same time because we just had a bad experience towards the end. But I feel like because you were going for so long, so often, you became dependent on it. Yes. And I'm glad, because now I feel like now you still go, you know, everybody goes through shit, but you're able to kind of work through it on your own.
I do apply the things.
Right, that you learned.
Right, and that's why I'm always like, that's
and it's kind of good that
be.
Safety net was like pulled from you, because then it forces you to be in control. And like, I said
that to my trainer a couple weeks ago too. I'm like, I've had like a past with my therapist, and like, I don't want to be dependent and say that I'm not going to work out, you know, my trainer or whatever. So I had that conversation with him and be like, I need a minute because I don't want to be like dependent. I should be able to do this on my own. Right. So
But it's kind of crazy because I feel like you've been so independent with so many other parts of your life.
True.
You know what I'm saying? That it's kind of crazy that like you do become dependent, but I feel like it's because, maybe because you've never had anyone to depend on. When you do get those people, you want to like cling to them. You know what I'm saying?
For me, it was like I would never talk to anybody in my whole life the way that, or like open up about the things that I did with her.
And
I didn't have anybody like you can say best friends since XYZ, and my best friend since XYZ didn't even know those things.
Really?
Yeah. So like as, you know, like a kid, and
I feel like with us though, we talk about a lot of shit.
Right, and from jump.
Yeah.
So
I think it just depends on the type of people that you have in your life.
Right, who you feel safe with.
Yeah, basically.
For you to be, and that was the thing. I was like, okay, that was like, one, I'm very open about that kind of stuff, like about my life in general. Not that I like go around and be like, this is what happened.
But you're not like ashamed.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like I'll be the first to be like, oh yeah, this is what just went down,
right,
you know? And for me to do that on like off rip, and then like I said, you know, you have best friends, and like they don't even know this, you know.
Half the shit, yeah.
That means like a lot. Like when you feel safe enough to do that, and
definitely.
Like completely,
authentic.
Your authentic self.
Yeah, for sure.
So
it's hard to come by people like that.
Right, and that's what was happening in therapy for a while.
Yeah.
And then what happened was that, like, she was relating. I remember when I was referred to her, and the person was like, oh, she's like around your age. She's also a single mom. Like, I think it'll be good. So like we related to things, and then it became too personal.
I think that's what happened with me and her too. And I think that's like, I've always been the type of person, no matter who I meet or whatever, I get deep off rip. Like, I don't know. Like, we both just get deep with each other. And I think that's also why I'm, like, good at what I do. Because I can get there with, like, whoever sits in my chair, basically. And I feel like that happened with me and the therapist, too. Like, too soon. And that's, I don't know. I feel like that's why it kind of caused some conflict.
It did. Like,
after a couple sessions.
Too comfortable and, like...
Yeah, and, like, she was, like, telling me about her life. And, like, that should never be the case with a therapist.
Same. That's why I'm so, like, the part that about that whole situation was, like, that makes me feel, like, okay, is, like, that was all her thing.
And that was what I was going to say, too, when you said, oh, she's a single mom, this, and the third.
That was
I feel like she just had so many unhealed things. And it's kind of crazy because I feel like, not that a therapist should be healed. I feel like it is good when they can relate and they've gone through stuff. But they should be actively doing the work so they don't project. And I feel like she was projecting. And that was, like, the problem. Or, like, allowing her personal life or her personal feelings to affect her sessions.
Yeah.
You know?
And when you can, like, step back from a situation and be like, oof, unfortunately that was a her thing and not a me, then I'm like, okay, I feel better. If it was a me, and of course after all, you know, it was said and done at the end, I'm like, okay, I can see, you know, take my accountability in all of it, but a lot of it was...
But I feel like she's the one that was supposed to be
right, you're the professional. Right, you're the professional.
So if you were overstepping or doing too much or whatever, then she should have not, you know...
Right, yeah.
Stop that from happening, but...
Yeah, whatever, it is what it is. That was my first
And we
experience.
haven't been to therapists?
No, literally.
I think we're each other's therapists at this point.
Ooh, this Red Bull is fucking...
Not good?
Let me try again, hold on.
That's like our 5th shot. We definitely have to go out. So, you're turning 35 this year. How do you feel about that?
It's basically 40 in my brain.
That's how you feel?
Yeah.
But you're such a young 30s.
Really?
You still got it in you, sister.
But then I also, like, don't want to be that person that's, like, older and thinks they're still 21 at the same time, you know? Am I that delusional?
No, not at all. Not at all. You don't give, like, immature? Absolutely the fuck not. That's what I wanted to ask you, because we're 10, 11 years apart, whatever. Do you feel like you can see the difference, like, because I'm young? Like, do I act, like, young, or do you feel like we're on, like, a different wave? Like, you know what I'm saying?
The very first, like, I would have never thought you were, like, did I know
24.
how old you were when we first met? Because you were 22 at that point. You weren't,
like
just turned 23. Yeah. I would have never thought you were that age, for one. The only time I feel like I could see slightly, and I don't even think it's an age thing, I think it's just being a parent and not being a parent, is like when we're out, like, I'm like falling asleep, or like, I gotta get home tonight, kid, versus like,
I
that's
can go
literally
all night.
the only time. Or like, I'm like, this is not safe. Remember when I was like clematis, like we're hopping clubs, like that's dangerous. And you're like, it's fine, I do it all the time and we are fine.
That's dangerous is crazy. You think that's dangerous?
No, because I used to do that when I was like 21, 22, 23. Like I've told you, like I would go missing.
But too, I feel like I'm not like that either. Like even when I drink, like I'm not the type to like run away. I feel like I'm always still very like aware.
I think I had said that when as far as like club hopping or whatever, and I was like, oh, we're gonna be like, I'm just paranoid as fuck. That's all. And so it's not even. I feel like it's not even so much an age. I think it's like a parent type thing versus not. That's all.
Right.
And that's the only aspect ever. Other than that, I would never even think you were the age that you were.
Right.
Like to have it all together and just, I'm big on like communication and like emotional intelligence and like we said like feeling safe and you know whatever, and then like I said, like so many people will talk about all that and like, oh, I want to,
and that's also not an age thing. Like you can be any age and either be immature or
it's not really I would never, you could tell me you're 21, I'm like, okay, period.
Right.
Like the biggest part of us connecting and becoming friends and all of that, like I've always been the type of person that's like, I don't want friends. Like, like I don't trust anybody.
That's how I am too. Yeah.
So like, I'm not out here in my 30s talking about like, oh, let's make new friends. Like that's never been the vibe.
I feel like I've never been like that. Period.
Ever, right.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I have my best friends.
I've always had a small circle.
I was middle school or in middle school, you know, and I remember you were like, oh, that's your best. Like you had asked me something like about it before, and I was just like. It's just the point of how many years versus the connection. Because you can say someone's your best friend for X amount of years, but
sometimes too, I feel like that's why new friendships like work out better because you meet the people, and if you connect with who you are at that time,
the different stages in life,
versus like a friend you've been for so long and now you've changed and you've grown and you're different and grow apart. And then if that person's
not on the same growth and you know whatever, and you're like, okay, so I feel like we're still friends here, so we are here, and not in a bad way at all. Like it's okay to have like, I feel like I'm a little iffy about this, but I will say it either way. Is that I feel like I've learned to like have friends at different levels, although I don't like that, and that was hard for me. It came up in therapy, and that's where it is hard for me because I'm so much of the person like, if you're not here, what do you?
That's how I am too.
I remember that conversation. So I'm like, it's hard.
Like I don't want to have to hold back as a friend because you're not meeting me where I'm at type shit.
Right. And like if you're not giving the same energy, and it's not even about materialistic or like what you're doing for me, but it's like if I couldn't depend on you for that, but you can depend on me for that, like what are we?
Yeah. It's one-sided. Like, it's not reciprocated.
We don't talk. If I stop texting you, we don't talk. You know.
Yeah.
So it is hard for me, but I also at the same time I am taking that into consideration, and I'm like, okay, that's a friend at this level.
You have friends for different reasons.
Life is a little bit different for me this go round because I'm actually out of my shell, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But I had let go of myself for so long, so where now it's like, oh, I told my trainer, I'm like, I have friends that are like, what are we doing?
I was gonna say, do you feel like I helped you like come out of that shell?
For sure. That's what I was just like, I have friends now that are like, every holiday, every this, we're celebrating. Like the first time we hung out, it was my birthday, and I'm not used to that, and I'm fully for it, but at the same time I'm like, I have to, okay, let me get out of my shell. Oh, let me not be that person that like, I'm gonna blow this off because that's good and that's what I want and it's good, so I don't want to, because you know how I get.
And it is scary like hanging out with new people and new friends, and you never know if a bitch is fucking weird and like, I don't know.
That's just so not like me at all. And then with us becoming friends, and then of course that's, you bring Sarah into the picture, and that whole backstory of how we work together, we never met each other, and then oh, this is my friend, and you know whatever, and as real as fuck as she is, and like cool, like I would just never imagine a couple of years ago like having a whole new like friend group and like mindset, and the people that are around you make such a difference. They really do. But the biggest part I would think, or I would say with like you and I, is that I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't really say it has anything to do with the age gap or anything, but like you've kind of brought like the light. Like you've made me No, I'm
gonna
serious.
Nate is like, please don't.
I'm saying this because I said this to my trainer, so I'm trying to remember like how I explained it to him. Like, even like a simple, like if you were to look at my Instagram, like that's bare minimum. Like to like take pictures and like post myself and like, oh, let's go out. You're fine. Let's just fucking go. Like how you are in my fucking closet when I'm being annoying and I'm like, I'm not fucking going. And just to go out and like be like, all of that is how I used to be. So you kind of like brought it back.
Right.
And
just reignited your spark.
No, literally. And I know I say pictures, but it's not just that. Like I'm always like,
no, but it's those little things that you can see the difference.
Yeah.
In how
like
you are,
somebody rooting for you, or like, oh, like wait, what?
And I feel like that's why I've like fallen out with friends in the past. Is I'm always like that. Like I'm always a very like clap for the people around you.
Right.
But I also grew up with that, and I feel like people don't like.
Right.
My family is so supportive, and like that was my foundation, and like they clap for everything. You know what I'm saying? Like. And I feel like that's just like embedded in me now. And I've had friends, but like too, I feel like as you grow up, it's not an excuse if you didn't experience that necessarily.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I said, if you value someone, you'll reciprocate that energy.
Exactly.
And I've had friends where like, and I've literally confronted one before, and I feel like it's not, like I hate to be like, oh my God, you're jealous of me. Like that just sounds crazy.
Yeah,
but like sometimes you can just like feel that energy. And I've like said that before, and obviously she didn't fucking take it well. But like, if that's how I feel, that's how I feel. And if it's like, if I'm clapping for you for everything and I'm showing up for you, and like I do something big or something new and you don't have shit to say about it, it's kind of like, what the fuck, you know? Like,
yeah, we were talking about that this morning at my lash appointment too. Like, you can tell me the sky is blue, I don't believe you. Anybody.
Do you feel like that's why you're so like shut off from like actually like meeting new people?
Right, because that's a waste of energy and a waste of time that I don't even have. Like I don't even have that energy for myself.
Do you feel like there's good men out there?
I don't know. I mean,
have you like, I feel like I'm the type where like when a good man comes across, I get the fucking ick. Which is definitely, so like I feel like there's been potential. I just like,
I can't even think of a potential.
Really? Like you feel like you never came across?
Like the one person I'm thinking off the top of my head, like that I was like, oh, he's probably a good guy and he's fucking annoying.
The one that tried to
kiss
you?
Thing. And I never talked to him again. And then you like slowly expose yourself, and I'm like, exactly. So like for example, like in my family, I have one uncle that's still married to like from high school, like his wife is
I
from
feel
high
like the
school.
only, well,
That's
I feel like
the
I've
only...
came across good men, but I feel like my dad is a very good example, which is why it's kind of crazy how it's been like, why do I choose, you know what I'm saying, who I choose when I've had a good example.
Not related to that most likely.
Yeah.
Not that I know what, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That was a big thing in therapy for me too, was like the whole dad thing. Like she would always resort to it being like a daddy issue, you know, daddy issues, whatever. And I'm like, I don't see, my dad didn't do anything wrong. He could have killed someone in front of me and I'd be like, my dad was perfectly fine. Mind you, I grew up watching, like visiting my dad through the jail cameras. So he was for sure, like, I mean, he was like a full-blown alcoholic, like cheater, like abuser.
You just ignored it.
Yeah, he did no wrong in my eyes. So when she would be like, oh, you know, what you pick in men and your relations, whatever, like often is what you let. And I'm like, my dad didn't do anything to me. What are you talking about?
And like, that's obviously not true if my dad is a good man
and I would blame it all like on my mom, and I'd be like, no, she had all the boyfriends and she was unstable and she moved us, whatever. Like, I mean, I'm not even gonna say I still don't feel like that, but I don't get the whole like daddy issues. I get it, and then I don't. And so then with Leilani, then I start to think about it and I'm like, okay, I can see maybe where they were going with that, you know, like not having...
Do you worry about her in terms of...
for sure. It's more of like, I've already screwed you up from jump. And what's crazy is that you don't really realize, like, on the subject what my therapist used to say about like the daddy issues, and like I said, I'll be like, no, my dad's like, what are you talking about? He was like the greatest. He didn't do anything wrong. But I guess it's like that first love, like showing you your first love. and how like big of an impact that really makes. So yeah, her being she's gonna be 10 this year, like what does she know what a relationship is?
Hindsight 2020, what would you have done differently regarding her?
Oh dear God, 2020?
No, I'm saying hindsight 2020.
Oh,
like
okay.
you can see clearly, like what would you have done different with her, if anything?
I don't even know if I should say it because it's bad. I would have never brought a child into this situation, period. Okay. I would never, never. You're back then, like even just the mindset of like, oh, it's fine, I got this. That mindset, or the mindset of, oh, this is gonna make me keep a man. Not to say that was my whatever.
That's why I feel like the topic of like abortion,
right,
is like you don't like people don't want people to have abortions, but it's like it's worse bringing a kid
into a broken home. Yeah,
and like they're gonna grow up and have traumas and have like
right. You're literally birthing out traumas,
right?
Because regardless of what the mother's going through in the womb which is what I learned in that parenting class that I took, like what I was going through regardless of what she came out to, what I was going through affected her. Not only that, and then you're bringing a child into a broken home, and then that's where I get such, with my family, they're all abortion.
But at the time, did you know that she was being brought into a broken home?
Let me think. Well,
it wasn't a happy home.
Right. Well, we also know that what we thought and what really.
I know, but you didn't know that at first.
Yeah. Okay, so. No, honestly, what my first thought was that I had started to move on with. And then that happened, so that was like, this is what I thought at that time, was like...
It was a sign,
right,
to go back.
This is what it was going to be. What a joke. A literal joke that ended up. But I did it at that time, but at that time, my mindset was absolutely like, oh, this is going to make me be with him for, like, keep him around. Or
damn, that was really your mindset?
Yeah, no, for sure, at that time. And
see, I've never been through that.
But
if
only
anything, I'm trying to avoid it all costs.
My mindset was only that because, like I said, I had just finally moved on for the first time in how many years? Like that was great and whatever. And then that happened, and I was like, oh, I fucked up. Like this is, like I said, I thought it was a sign, and that's where I was supposed to be, and it was all that whatever. So that's the only reason that I had that mindset. Again, what a joke that turned out to be, but I could never, and that's why like the biggest thing, like my nieces and cousins and like the youngers in my family, I'm like, please be so for real, like don't ever feel that way, because I just don't think that people bringing a child into the world, like they don't understand what all. So even for like the people in my family, okay, we don't believe in abortion, and the Bible says it and whatever, and God will take you through anything. Like, okay, I understand that. I grew up Christian, whatever, but there's no way that like that child's not gonna have trauma. There's no, of course God's gonna get you through it, and you're gonna make it, and it's gonna be struggles, and you're whatever. But like that doesn't stop the fact that person's gonna have. But and then on that same note, I'm like, okay, well, nobody's perfect and nobody's not going to have trauma ever in their life. So then that's unrealistic for me to think that, like, nobody, and that's going to make that person stronger and whatever. But I feel like that's on a different level where you shouldn't inflict that on someone by choice.
Right. I don't know. Like, committing to something, like, even marriage sounds so crazy to me.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because I'm like, for the rest of our life?
Right. No.
Like, that just sounds kind of crazy.
And what all that comes with, again, I don't feel like people just like with a kid, like,
it's just so
just
normal.
And whatever. Okay.
And that too, like having a kid, like even the commitment of having a kid, just sounds so crazy to me.
Like my situation, and I say this to say, can you imagine if that's what actually I was committed to for the rest, like my whole life? To where now I'm like, thank God. But in that because I have a friend who's going through something similar, and the first thing that I'm thinking, like, you have to deal with this person for the rest of your life. So it's one thing to be in a relationship and it's toxic and or whatever, but then you bring a child into it and now you're literally stuck to not only physically that person, but they're generational and they're everything. You're stuck with that. The fact that I was a whole bartender and I really didn't.
You were in nightlife for a long time.
The lifestyle, yes. Working in it was just the end couple of years, but the lifestyle of
being outside and
right.
But working in it is so different than just like going out.
Yeah,
I fear. I don't know.
Either way, how drained it working or being in that lifestyle or whatever.
That's why I don't know how people do that shit every fucking weekend.
Like the sleep schedule and the you're eating and how you're like, oh my gosh, that's insane.
I feel like I definitely couldn't have done it past, like, I did that shit when I was 18. If I were to do that now, I would be unwell. But I feel like because I was so young, I just could, like, bounce back and, like, you know, be fine.
Yeah.
But, like,
the last time I did it, I was in my, 2-3 years ago, and I was, like, miserable. I worked my whole day job and then go do that, and I'm like, I don't even want to be showing my ass right now. Like, don't fucking look at me. Don't even come to my bar. Like, leave me alone.
For sure.
Versus when I was in my 20s, and, like, I always had 2 jobs. Like, I would always have my normal job, and then I would be a server or a bartender on the side. So it was just so normal to me. But to think now, 14 hours, like, bartending, serving, whatever, like, is insane.
Yeah.
Insane. And again, just that lifestyle and that sleep schedule and that everything about it. It's just, and then of course
I remember like being like, I feel like when you're high it's kind of like you just see things differently, but I remember like being in the club when I was like young and like being high and feeling like I was like around a whole bunch of demons, which is really some high shit, but you like, were I feel like that's how it is.
Literally
like,
were. I
even remember like this one time, and I'll never fucking forget it, when I was with my ex and we were like, we were in my Miami apartment and we were like laying next to each other going to sleep, and I was high. And I was like, there's a demon next to me. And it was just like so crazy. And I feel like I'm already so like in tune with the spiritual world that I can like see things in that way. But like, I don't know, like.
What you're describing, now imagine that completely sober, because that's my everyday life.
Really?
Like, no, literally. Like, I can walk in a room and like I sense it and then they sense that I can sense it. And so like, I remember being at a restaurant with my brother in Texas, and his wife was like, why are those older ladies staring at us? I said, because she's a witch.
I feel like that's why we're so in touch with like the universe and the moon and like all these kinds of things. And I know people like separate like God and like
and that's why
the universe, so, like, but to me it's everything is the same. It's all one, and it's like,
I'm not out here like
it's just the spiritual realm.
It's just genuinely like I first of all, I've seen that since I was a kid. Like, we grew up with demons in the house. So when when I say that to people, like, like, when I say that to people, like, I'll say it casually, thinking because that's my normal. And, like, for example, Amira's like, bitch, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, no, the little girl, like, da-da-da, whatever. And I'm like, no, like, that's just, I've always, in my family, they're always like, I'm the one that has the dreams. I'm the one that points to, like,
same.
Always. Like, I'm just, I remember a couple years ago, we were at my sister's, husband, like his grandma passed away. We were at a funeral.
This one?
And he had family.
This is why I can't watch scary movies.
Oh yeah, me neither. I don't watch nothing on the TV because you fall asleep to that, and then a commercial comes on, and that's just in your room. That's why we go to sleep to Disney Junior or nothing.
And that's why, like, I've always said, like, I'm scared of the dark, whatever. And people are like, or like being alone, like living alone has always been scary to me. Now I'm fine, but like, bro, like, they'll be like, oh, like, you're, like, nobody's gonna break in, like, whatever. And I'm like, it's not people I'm worried about. Like, it's, like, the spiritual realm that fucking freaks me the fuck out.
See, I'm not scared.
Really? No, I'd be scared.
Like, my family, like, literally, they're like, what do you mean? Like, when I get woken up from, like, a spiritual type thing, like, this little girl was in my house for, like, a year or two.
Absolutely not.
Explain it that way, and people would be like, what do you mean? And I just, like, would wake up and I was more annoyed that you just woke me up out of my sleep and like I just pray and you go away. Like I'm not scared.
It's because you're so confident in your faith.
And so when I do have those dreams where I woke up and my heart is beating fast, like that's when I know it's serious, you know, versus you're just trying to mess with me because you know I just had a conversation about going back to church that I know, like I already know what you're coming here for. Or I know how you came in because so-and-so was in my house and they brought your energy and that's why that thing just fell off the wall. Literally, like that's why I am the way I am with my house.
Yeah. Well, I feel like exactly what you're saying, like that's why people get so turned off to like religion, like Christianity. Do you know like that confidence is greater than anybody who goes to church every Sunday?
Of course.
And that's the problem with my family.
That's why you don't link, that's why you can't link them.
And that my family, they think I'm nuts. They think I'm like, because I'm not in the church like they are. They're the like Christians that like.
You're
you know the. I don't know if you guys know like about the Bible, like, but like the history of it, it's like those Pharisees, right? Yeah. So those were like the church leaders. So think of Pharisees like a pastor, like, oh, I go to church all the time. I know the Bible front and back. But you don't have faith like that. Like if that were to happen, you'd be scared, or you'd be like, oh my God, I don't know what this is. Like that confidence is just.
And that's like the biggest struggle with my family because they're all like in the church and yeah, that's, you know, whatever. And it's like, no, I don't know that much and I don't go to church. I'll watch it on TV on Sundays, you know, whatever. I'm not with, because I feel like you're in a whole cult over there with what you're doing and what you got going on with that whatever lady. And no, because I don't know that. But at the same time, like growing up with my mom and like whatever, like the anxiety and the whatever, like that's not faith. Yeah, and like the anxiety that I have is general, like diagnosed generalized anxiety. I'm not over here worried about how my bills are going to get paid, or I'm not worried, like for example, and those kind of things I don't worry. It's weird because I'm a super anxious person for no reason, like, you know, and I don't sit and, you know, exactly. So that's what I'm always questioning, like me and my sister and my mom, we always, and I'm like, but you're this woman of faith, and so what are you over here, what do you mean you're not going to pay your bills? Like
it's for show. They don't actually feel that shit internally.
And that's the thing I can't vibe with.
It's like, an outside thing and it's supposed to be an inside thing.
And you don't even feel that way about yourself, and you're not that. Oh, God delivered you from your
and
anxiety.
That's why people don't like the church.
In the corner, like, please.
And that's the thing, like, again, I see why a lot of people are turned away from like going to church.
Yeah, for sure.
Trust me. I've been to a church and I'm like, I will never go to that church.
Yeah, I was raised like even
I can see the demons in the church too. And I remember I just went on the first day of the year. On the first Sunday of the year, I went into like a new church in Palm Beach or whatever. The pastors, I was like, they're not.
Yeah, see, I pick up on that.
No.
Bro.
I saw like the demon in them. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
No, it's so crazy.
It's crazy.
Insane.
Like,
but I'm so glad that I'm like that. Like I'd rather be, you know what I'm saying? Right. Like I don't want to be a fucking
always
sheep or delusional.
You called it, like my sister, she's older than me. She's 4 years older than me, and I've called out every single friendship she's ever had, and she'd be like, I was always like, oh, my sister just stank, like don't mind her, or whatever. I'm like, because I've been said, and then that happened. Yeah. Like that she was a snake, like, and I don't say it, and that's how they take it. They're like, oh, you're negative, whatever. Like
you just have good discernment.
That funeral that my sister's husband, whatever, like this lady, it ended up being like his cousin or something that came down from New York. I don't know who she was, and we're at this funeral, and I feel her eyes like beating to the back of my head. She's staring at me, like while we're looking at the person, you know, talking at the funeral, whatever. And I end up turning. I kept catching her staring at me, whatever. I'm like, why is she staring at me? And so we get up, everything's done, and everybody's saying bye, and so and they ended up like her and her mom ended up like, oh, we're so and so sister, cousin, brother, whatever. Nice to meet you, and like gave me a hug, and instantly I'm like, oh, she hugged me. I looked down and she had a red bracelet on her hand, and I'm like, she's a witch.
Yeah, sometimes they can like feel
like, it.
They know your gift.
Right. They know that I can see them. Yeah. And so I told my sister, I'm like, yeah, she hugged me, and she had a red bracelet on. So she's a witch. And we went home and looked at her Facebook, and we were like scrolling. Again, this is like her husband's long lost, whatever we call her. We go and look at her Facebook, and that's exactly what was all over her Facebook. Mm-hmm. So at that time that I worked at the front door of the bar, whatever, especially the front door, because you're dealing with money and these people that are coming in. And I'll never forget, this one guy was all pissed about what he had to pay and whatever the security was telling him, whatever. And he handed me his money, and he was mumbling under his breath and staring at me while he was handing me his money. then somebody told me, they're like, oh, you know, them touching your hand and with money and like that exchange and all of that, like, he was mumbling under his breath for a reason, whatever. Like when I worked at that club, and the energies and the people that I interacted with and the money and just in that setting alone and being the front of it, like you come to the door, it's me, like, you know. I love good conversation.
Me too.
Like when you see me like just staring at the wall, it's because people are talking about fucking nothing. And
I
like,
hate fucking small talk. Gotta keep on.
I think that's one of the first things I said after our appointment, I'm like, but just the conversation, like we had such good conversation, and it wasn't.
I've been seeing a lot of like TikToks and Reels lately explaining what ADHD feels like in your brain. Also, there was a guy on Love is Blind UK that had ADHD, and the way he explained it was like crazy.
How about the video I sent you when I was like, this is my brain, and you were like, what the fuck?
That's insane.
Insane, because that lady explained it to the fucking T, the lettuce lady.
I just can't imagine.
I know, and that's why I'm like,
can't imagine.
I don't even like to be the type like, oh, it's me. I don't like to blame anything.
Yeah.
I just like want people to like understand, hopefully, or like see, like, I promise I'm not making this up. So many things that like because obviously I'm just diagnosed in my 30s for the first time, but to think back on my childhood and to now have Leilani, like, and seeing it in her, like, that's more so of what made me realize that about myself, is seeing it in her, and then her dealing with what she's dealing with, and I'm like, that was fucking me. And like nobody saw it. They didn't, and you know, they're like, oh, we didn't know back then about or whatever. Like, okay, whatever, I'll give you that. But to see what she goes through and like to that literally be me, I'm like, okay, this ain't make believe, because you know how people are like,
that's
oh,
so good though that you've experienced it, so
and
you don't ignore it in her.
Everybody's you know how they see those reels that like, oh, it's trending, everybody has autism, or everybody whatever, and I'm like, no, literally my kid, I can see, you know. And then of course I don't remember my childhood, so my sister's like, yeah, you used to be in the corner rocking, holding your ears, what are you talking about? I'm like, perfect. No, I don't remember. Thank you. She's like, you would always play by yourself in the closet, and like everything was too loud for you all the time. And I'm like, okay. And now everything that Leilani deals with at school, I'm like, that's how we beating down their doors all the time. These people. Her teacher now, he's so good. Her homeroom teacher, he was like, we had a meeting a couple weeks ago, and he was, you know, getting them ready for 5th grade. He's like, it's a huge transition, like of them, like they want them to be more independent and self-sufficient, and you know, like, whereas now they come home and you're like, oh, what do you have for homework, what are we studying for? They want them to do that all on their own, and that's really hard for her, because she's naturally like she's a little behind, like her brain, like in the sense of not like knowledge, but like her mindset, and that's why she always gets along with like younger kids and you know whatever. So like I try to like take note of that, but at the same time I'm like, this is what the world is going to expect of you, like they want you to do all of this. So he knows, her teacher now, he like knows, and he's like, I'm telling you this, like you fight for her it's called a support plan because she's in private school, but essentially it's like an IEP. And he's like, you keep fighting for that and keep it through middle school, she's gonna need it. And he's like, I don't say that in the sense of whatever, but like the expectations that they're about to put on these 5th graders, everything is crammed into like 45 minutes. Even if you're just fighting for her to have longer testing time, to at least have that part, and like just to have more time, like that alone. He's like, I can see with her comprehension, like she's read, like you would think she was a genius, I'm not even just saying that, like 2-3 years old. She doesn't comprehend. She can read it, and then you ask her what the story's about, she has no idea. He's great. He's like, you keep fighting for her to have that extra time, and not to say anything. She got it. She just needs that extra 5 minutes or that extra 10 minutes. Or in math, for example, she just needs the teacher to explain it to her differently, or like a visual. And she's good. She got it from there. So, and I'm like, that was me. As a kid, because we're reading a chapter book and you lost me at sentence A, like the very first sentence, and I've got nothing for you. I don't know what it was about. So we barely graduated. So it's more so,
it's crazy
like,
how like all those things are just now becoming like normalized, or like, I don't know,
and that's why there's so much of like the stigma of like, oh, it's just trending and that's what everyone has, da da da, whatever. And I'm like, no, it's legit.
Yeah.
I promise. Because, for example, what you said, like, to meet someone that doesn't think like me, it's like, wait, you don't think like that? I thought this was you're those don't go through your.
Yeah.
So cute.
Okay, guys, we are all done 7 hours later. Thank you for watching, and subscribe and like this video and drop a comment.